Welcome to another episode of Technado. Quick reminder before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, ACI Learning, the people behind IT Pro, and a reminder you can use that code Technado30 for a discount on your IT Pro membership. I, of course, am one of your hosts, Sophie Goodwin, here to hopefully lead you without too many events through the tech news of this week. And I'm not alone here. If you've been here before, you know that. I've got Don over here to my left. Don, are you getting into the Christmas spirit yet?
I am. You know, every year, once a year, I needlessly endanger my life by hanging Christmas lights on the house.
Aww.
And at the apex of my roof, I know exactly how tall it is. It's 26 feet tall because I have a 26-foot ladder. So I know it's exactly that tall. And so every year when I'm up there on that top rung and I'm putting that top light, I think to myself,
you're shaking like a dog passing a peach seed.
And I'm like, you know what? Why didn't I pay somebody to do this?
Yeah.
And then I'll forget, and next year I'll do it again. And so I did that this weekend. We're decorated and ready to rock.
Wow, I truly was not expecting that analogy to come out of your mouth. I can honestly say I don't think I've ever heard that before this moment. So
listen, Justin is sitting at home right now going, "Oh yeah, that's a good one. I know
that
one.
That's a classic, is it?
That's a redneck classic right there."
Okay,
yeah.
I'll add it to my.
I nicened it up a a little bit, but.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
He made it G-rated.
Yeah,
This is
that's
going to
right.
go on
It's a family
YouTube.
show.
We don't.
I was as nervous as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs.
That's right. Busy as a
That one I've
one-legged
heard.
man in a butt-kicking contest.
There you go.
That's a new one. The rocking chair one I've heard. That's wow. So okay, yeah, and of course we got Daniel here, and that he is solely here to provide us with all of our lovely little sayings.
That's right. Our redneck epitaphs or whatever.
Southern
it is.
colloquialisms.
Yes, colloquialisms. That's it.
There you go. All right. Well,
We sound more knowledgeable when you use big words like that.
Well,
I went to school. I ain't afraid to show you all my learning.
yeah, the big words, the cornucopia, the veritable cornucopia of words at your disposal. We'll go ahead and jump in, and we'll see how many more of those Daniel can get into this episode. But we've got some great news for you this week, as we always do. This first one comes to us from Ars Technica. It says Gmail's AI-powered spam detection is its biggest security upgrade in years. This sounds to me like it's kind of interesting, but also AI spam detection. I feel like there's probably a lot of room for error there, right?
You would think. I mean, obviously, spam detection is not perfect. We all get spam, no matter how advanced the spam filters get. Things still get through. And when I heard about this, I have a couple of reactions these days. So if I see AI in a headline, immediately I'm like, all right, what is this BS? And, how are they trying to push AI on us again? And then because it's Google, I immediately think, okay, how are they trying to use my data against me? So, I go into these kind of negative, but in this case, I'm glad I looked into it further because what they're trying to do is actually really impressive. I don't know if you guys have looked, but like Google's Gmail spam filter is really effective. They do a great job at trimming out most spam. Microsoft 365 does a decent job, but Gmail does a better job. But if I go into my spam folder, usually if they identify spam and they know it's spam, it gets deleted. I never even see it. It doesn't even show up in the spam filter. It's just gone. Like if they're certain that it's spam. But I constantly see ones where the subject line, the letters are all like in a weird font and bold, or the words have a 0 instead of an O, so they don't look like a word. Whoever's writing the spam is intentionally obfuscating the characters by using weird fonts where they can use different symbols that look like letters and stuff. You've probably seen this, and it's hard for a spam filter to catch that because, especially with like the Unicode character set, there's so many different characters out there that can be used. And that's what Google's actually trying to tackle, is they've come up with a method to use AI to look at these strings and identify whether they're words, even if they're not using letters. So if I write the word open and instead of an O, I do a 0, like their AI algorithm will recognize that and say, oh, wait, this is somebody trying to skirt around and write the word open without the letter.
I'll be really interested in how is it that they are doing that, right? Because if they're just basically, just a large if statements, if else, if else, if else, if else, if else, if else, and you kind of create a list of these are some of the common words, but of course then that becomes a cat and mouse game. I feel like it would be more probable that they're trying to teach the AI what a word looks like, because that's the problem. The AI doesn't know what a word looks like we do. It's really interesting when you get into any kind of like programming, you find out really quick that getting a computer to do something that we think is just the easiest thing in the world, it's not as easy as it seems when you try to walk through the logic of it. take dates, for example, right? I tried to build an amortization table one time. How long will it take me to pay off this debt based off of this percentage rate and this monthly payment? And then as I reduce the principal down to, right, it's simple math basically to make that happen. But to tell the computer, well, how much will I pay off per month? Well, how many months are there? What's a month? How many days are in each month? Oh, they're different. So I've got multiple months. What the hell's a year, right? It doesn't know these things intuitively. You have to teach it to it. And that gets really complex. So if they're teaching this to learn what a word looks like, I feel like this would be the first step into now we've got a CAPTCHA bypass, right? Because it knows what it should be. It can see it and it understands what that looks like.
Now, in this case, I think this is exactly what AI is designed for, though. Like using your example, AI has already been trained on a model, so it knows what a month is. It knows that there's different days and different months and leap year and all that. Like, it knows about that stuff.
Yeah.
And it knows that it's impossible to pay off a mortgage. So, like, it would know to have all that information. In this case, it knows what our words are.
Right.
And so it can look at these patterns and just say, does this pattern align with a word? And it doesn't have to be specific words like you mentioned. It can be the whole dictionary because, it's processing power, and Google's got plenty of that. In their initial tests, they're saying that it's 38% more accurate, and it has 19% less false positives. So that means they got positive outcome out of it, and those are pretty significant numbers. That it sounds promising. The only negative here, in my opinion, is that it's Google proprietary, right? It's in Gmail. So if you use Office 365, if you run your own email server, if you run OwnCloud and the hackers run your email server, then then you can't use this, right? It's proprietary to Google. But if Google had the idea, other people will too. And to me, this is actually a useful way to leverage AI.
I wonder if it's going to become the snake eating its tail, because we're starting to see a bunch of spam and hacking groups creating phishing emails and things of that nature with AI. And now we're have AI trying to fight AI. It's going to be a race to the bottom, right? It's going to be which AI can out AI the other one until the machine explodes and we all go back to like living in the caves, I guess.
We don't even have to get socially engineered anymore. The computer is just going to socially engineer itself.
Yeah. We don't write emails. We don't see communications. The AI just tells us, here's the pure form.
I think you're right. The whole thing you mentioned about how Gmail's actually a lot better already at filtering this stuff out, because Gmail's one of the only, like I use, Office 365, for some stuff, but I used to be an AOL user and now I'm Gmail and I love it. And I think I kind of got to the point where I sort of took it for granted because I hardly check the spam folder because it's so good at filtering out the stuff that is spam that I don't ever, maybe it got caught by the spam filter. It almost never does. It's always so good at it. So I kind of have gotten to the point where I take it for granted.
Yeah, you missed out in a positive way because in the early days of spam filters, we just refer to that folder as our second inbox.
Yeah, inbox 2.
And so, inbox 1 you knew you had to deal with, and then inbox 2 you still had to check every day, but maybe just not as often.
Yeah.
And that's why you'll still see like the vestiges of that with, hey, if you don't see the email, check your spam filter, check this, that, because we might get picked up as that.
Yeah. I get password reset requests in my junk mail all the time. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Right, because it could be used as a phishing link.
Yeah,
that's true.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I mean, if this is the case that this is what they're working on and that it's gonna, what you said is a 38% already improvement. So I'm looking forward to this because, like I said, I'm already happy with the way that Gmail's handling it.
Just don't use email.
They still have it in testing. Okay. And so it hasn't rolled out to the general public yet, but they'll move it pretty quick. Google's pushing their AI projects forward. Look to see this in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one and only time you will hear Don talk positively about AI on the show. So go back, record it, take your notes. I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing. We'll go ahead and jump into our next one. I don't think this has anything to do with AI, but I could be wrong. It is another email-related article, though. This one comes to us from xdadevelopers.com. So if you're looking to read the article, there's your link. Microsoft's new Outlook client quietly moves your email to the cloud, as opposed to causing a ruckus while it does it. So is this a good thing or a bad thing?
I thought my email was in the cloud, Don.
Well, so this is an interesting one because I think it was a month or two ago that we reported on how Microsoft was phasing out the Microsoft Mail client that's included by default in Windows. I made some jokes at the time about Outlook Express and Entourage and all these other mail clients they've had over the years. And they've finally decided to just release Microsoft Outlook for free for everyone and make it part of the operating system. However, now that the rubber has hit the road and people are getting a chance to look at this client, they're finding out that it's not exactly what Microsoft promised. It's not the full-blown Outlook client that comes with Office 365 or Microsoft Office subscriptions. Instead, this is something that you could view as being a bit misleading, right?
Not Microsoft. Say it ain't so, Don.
I know. If I were to take an email client running on my own computer, right? So here's this Microsoft Outlook packaged with Windows 11, and it's running on my computer, and I pointed at my email server. Now, whatever my email server happens to be, maybe it's Daniel and I were talking about Proton Mail at one point.
Yeah.
So maybe I use Proton Mail. Okay. So I point the client at Proton Mail, and I start checking my email, and the email's there. The reasonable assumption is that your email client is connecting directly to that email server, and it's downloading the emails.
It's using standard old IMAP or whatever.
Yeah. IMAP, POP3, SMTP, the standard protocols.
Yards,
obviously with security attached to it. And, this could be AOL, it could be whoever, right? That's the assumption we would make. Well, some of the folks over at XDA developers were testing this out, and what they found was that it was really weird because they weren't seeing connections to their mail server. When they looked at their TCP connections, there weren't connections to the mail servers. And then when they started digging into it further, they figured out what happened. When they added their email account to this new version of Outlook, it uploaded that to Microsoft. When you set up the OTP, it was like a MFA connection.
Right.
So when it set up authentication for it, the authentication token was stored in the cloud with Microsoft, and Microsoft was reaching out to their email server, and their client wasn't even storing the emails. Their client is really just rendering the mailbox that's being stored in the cloud with Microsoft. And so
it's acting as any other like SaaS application.
So this new Outlook client, from what they've tested and seen, is effectively a web browser. And all this stuff is actually happening in Microsoft. So you might think that you're setting up a direct connection to your mail client when in reality you're giving a ton of stuff to
Microsoft on the back end is reaching into your mailbox, and that's where the connection is actually happening. And when you get an email in Proton Mail or whatever mail, and it goes to you, it's actually going into Microsoft's cloud service.
Correct.
And then you're accessing it through Outlook, the browser. This seems weird.
Yeah.
Now, honestly, I wouldn't have a problem with it if it was fully disclosed. If it was like, if they told you that was happening, right? But instead, you get a quirky little message. I've seen the screen. I can't remember exactly what it says. Like, your data is safer in the cloud. Microsoft is doing blah, blah, blah. And they position it as just improving your security. But they don't really mention, like, oh, by the way, we're storing all this stuff
you
up
see,
at
Don,
Microsoft land.
Microsoft has the policy of it's better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. And then once the damage is done, once the milk is spilled, you're not going to try to put it back in the bottle. It's what are you going to do? This is the world we live in now.
Yeah.
I guess I'll deal with it, which most people, honestly, that's what they do. So it's funny. Microsoft has kind of been pissing me off here lately. I come into work. You know how I told you the other day how I was able to use a different authenticator app to log into Teams? Totally set that up. Everything was cool. And then I come into work the other day and it says, authenticate with your OTP. I said, okay, look at my authenticator, plug it in. It's like, cool. Now use the Microsoft authenticator.
Oh.
And I went, well, why? I just authenticated using an authenticator. It's like, no. You must use the authenticator from Microsoft. And I looked it up. So, I thought, well, there's got to be a way around this. I talked to Nate, and he's like, yeah, we've got ways that we can just use a different authentication because you have a preferred authentication method, and I can just set you up for that. He goes, you're already set up for that. What? And I said, well, come and take a look. And we looked at it. He's like, I feel like this shouldn't be doing this. So I went to dig in a little bit, and I saw there was a bunch of threads on Microsoft from people saying, the phone I used that had the authenticator, it died. How do I get in? I'm the admin for our system. The only mechanism for logging in now is Microsoft's authenticator. And if I no longer have that, they're like, you have to open a support ticket. And pray to Jesus that they will let you back in because you can't prove that it's you. It is a single point of failure, at least from what I was reading. If there's other things out there, ladies and gentlemen, that you know of getting around that, please drop a comment. I would love to hear this because I do not want to use them. I've already got an authenticator. I don't need 12 authenticators because you've decided that's the authenticator. So like I said, Microsoft's I'm on my shit list right now. I am taking a shovel to the reindeer stalls for the filled air stocking this year.
All right. Well,
Add it to the list. That's another one. That's a new one for me.
I think everything that Daniel has said is factually accurate. Going back to Outlook, in this case, the lesson I think here is
don't trust Microsoft.
If you were hoping for the full-blown Outlook client to be integrated into Windows for free, that's not happening, right? So what we're getting might be called Outlook, but it's like
you got the dollar store version of Outlook. You got Spider Guy instead of Spider-Man.
that is the perfect description. Yes.
And
in fact, we won't even refer to it as Outlook anymore. It'll be Spider Guy.
Spider Guy. Yeah. So go into Spider Guy.
So I love to go in, like I said before, and look at like the comments and stuff. And I'm curious if you think this has any merit. Somebody had said, oh, they're being sarcastic. I bet it has nothing to do with their astronomical investments in OpenAI and GPT. Having access to substantial amounts of emails couldn't be useful for that at all. Do you think that's maybe an alternate use, maybe for what they're gathering?
It's possible, right? So look at Google. I'll spin it back to Google.
It's always Google's fault.
So Gmail is free, right, for most people. So you can sign up for a free account, and they're going to host your email and give you spam filtering, and they do all this stuff for you, right, for free.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't cost you money.
But the trade-off is they're going to scan all your email, and they're going to serve you targeted ads, and that's how they make money, right? So they're using your email that way, and they've been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah.
And I forget when I got my Gmail account, but I think it was about 20 years ago. So
is it that old?
It would have been 2001, 2002 when I got mine.
I got my Gmail in like 2006 or 7.
Okay.
So, and that was still when it was invite only.
I was in the second round of beta invites.
Gotcha.
So it was early on.
Yeah.
But either way, that's the way they use the email. So
honestly, you might have sent me the invite.
I may have.
Yeah, I may have gotten the invite through you. Because we were working together at the time. Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah, back in my day, you had to get a Gmail account, required an invite for somebody who was already there.
They've been doing that for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
So for Microsoft to say, hey, we're going to use this email the same way, they probably already are with Outlook.com. In fact, I mean, what we've described with this Outlook client is no different than going to Outlook.com and setting up your email there. So I imagine you're right, Sophie, and that comment has merit.
Yep.
Okay, interesting. Okay, all right, that's great. I'm not scary at all. I looked up when you guys were talking about Gmail's start date. It says the official launch date was April 1st, 2004. So if I had to make a prediction, we will probably talk about the 20th anniversary of Gmail because it'll be this coming April.
That's true.
That they celebrate 20 years. And I don't know, maybe
they put
this
it
is
on.
Do what?
Yeah, like April Fool's Day.
Yeah,
is the day
yeah. I think they
Instagram.
acknowledged that. They were like, despite the coincidence, it's not a joke. This is not a game. This is real.
Yeah.
And this, I don't know. You were talking about in the beta, so maybe the beta was before this. This must have been, I guess, the official. Like everybody's got access. Who knows?
Don's gonna go look and see his oldest email.
I could do that.
Yeah.
And that would tell me.
That would tell you.
Yeah. Well, we don't have time to unpack all of that, but yeah, that's my prediction for. We'll probably talk about that when that comes up, but that won't be till April. So we've got time. We'll go ahead and jump into our next article, and this is part of one of my favorite segments called
Dope. Adequate.
I like getting the little nod of approval over here to my left. So this one comes to us from Tom's Hardware. It says, Windows Update renames every installed printer HP LaserJet Ultra M106,
And the hits
changes
just keep on
icons,
coming.
forces install of HP Smart App. So why, I guess, is my question.
All right, this is nuts. This is like the biggest screw up possible, and it's right here at the end of the year, so it's like a gift to us for. Last week, I started seeing some people commenting on why is the HP Smart App installed on my machine? I don't have an HP printer. What's going on, right? And when I see one person say something like that, I'm like, whatever. At some point they plugged in an HP printer, it auto installed, and that's that. But then I started seeing more, and then it started trending on Twitter or X or whatever it's called. And then so I started seeing more and more of this activity in the various forums and things that I participate in, and then it switched from not just why is the HP Smart App installed, why are all of my printers now named HP LaserJet Ultra M101-106?
Don't drink in code, ladies and gentlemen. Don't drink in code.
and the printers still work. Like, you can still print to it. And if you only had one printer, it wasn't that big of a deal. But if you have multiple printers, you didn't know which one was which anymore.
Right.
Sometimes their icons changed to the HP icon. Sometimes they didn't, so you could still figure out your printer. But what a weird problem. And a lot of people initially thought they had been hacked. They thought, like, oh, somebody's messing with my machine.
Right.
They've installed HP Smart App. It probably isn't HP Smart App, and so I've been affected. Well, it turns out they weren't affected, but there has been a screw up on Microsoft's side. Something has happened on Microsoft land where a recent update or change or something that they've done on their system is causing Windows machines to, and this is Windows 10 and Windows 11, so all, and all the way back to Windows Server 2012. So all currently supported versions of Windows are affected by this, where they can randomly rename all the printers and install the HP Smart App. If they're not...
What a weird thing, though. Like, how did this happen?
If they're not connected to the Microsoft Store, it doesn't happen. So
okay.
it's 100% related to the Microsoft Store and the way that it updates apps, which on a Windows 11 machine, they force you to set up a Microsoft account, which means you are connected to the Microsoft Store even if you never use it. So it impacts a lot of people. Now, I have 3 Windows machines, and none of them were affected. So I'm not exactly sure what triggers this. My Linux machine and my Mac weren't affected either, coincidentally. But talk about just a weird one, right?
Just such a strange phenomenon. Like, obviously, there was some odd coding error in how they built that update, and this is the result of that. We can find some interesting things when you accidentally don't, you forget to put something, or you accidentally loop it around to the wrong thing, or call the different function that you should have been calling, and now it's going crazy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't break anything per se, so it passed tests and goes, cool, ship it.
Here's where I get concerned, right? If you remember the old days, right? Windows 95, Windows 98, it came with very few drivers. And so whenever you bought a printer or any external device, you pretty much needed that vendor disk that had the driver on it. And if you lost that, you might be able to find the driver on the internet. You might not. People would try and use different drivers. And
well, then that became like a warehouse for malware.
Absolutely, right? So then you fast forwarded a bit to like later in Windows 2000 and Windows XP, we started having signed drivers, right? But you still had the challenge, like a lot of the drivers weren't built into the system, so you're still having to go out and get these drivers yourself. And then you fast forward to today, where we almost never have to download a driver. You plug in a device and Windows handles it for us. Microsoft said, look, we can do this more securely. Vendors can send us the drivers. We test them to make sure they work and they're not infected with malware, and then we safely deliver them to your machines, so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So then to see a screw up of this magnitude, all of a sudden you're like, well, on one hand, they're doing this favor that we don't have to worry about drivers so much. But on the other hand, how big of a screw up is this?
Yeah. I find it interesting that every one of the printers, like, so let's say I got 5 printers and they all get renamed to the same thing, that it allowed for you to name them all the same thing.
Yeah.
You'd think that the system would go, hey, I can't name that. This is already here. And that, you'd have to have copy 1, copy 2, or whatever the case is, that it would do that renaming scheme.
And that's a throwback to, like, you're used to Linux, Unix-based operating systems where almost everything's rendered as a file, right? So you can't have 2 files with the same name in the same folder, and you'd be prevented from that. But in Windows land, it's not like that. And so
it's the Wild West.
Every printer has its own GUID attached to it, and you can give them all the same name.
Oh, right, because underneath the hood, right, they have a GUID.
Yep, and the system's perfectly happy with it.
Yeah.
And not the user.
No, it causes all sorts of chaos in the old human mind.
So it does seem like at the end of the day, it's obviously inconvenient because this is a pain in my butt. Now I got to go in and fix it, and all my printers name the same thing, and I'm getting confused. But the author of the article did specify HP Smart is a genuine app, no malicious intent, unless you count the pushing of official HP ink cartridges as malicious, in which case, it's a malicious app, so you're in trouble. But other than that, there was no this is not like oh my god, we were compromised, like panic. This was just this is a really weird mistake that somebody made.
Right.
How did this happen kind of thing?
Let's double back, because you said, great, now I have to fix it. Do you know how to fix it?
I don't personally know.
Neither does Microsoft.
Because if you rename them, does it go back and rename them back?
It can, yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
So Microsoft has not fixed this bug yet. As of the recording of this podcast, this is not fixed. And
so you got to basically create like a PowerShell script that queries everything and make sure it's named correctly.
What Microsoft is saying is, wait. Just wait. We'll fix it.
Yeah.
Right? Because right now, if you rename them, it might stick, or it might end up pushing them back to the HP name. And if you uninstall the HP Smart App, it might reinstall itself because the problem has not actually been fixed. Microsoft is looking into it, and we shall see.
He's having a conniption over there.
Yeah, piss off, Microsoft. Just get it together already, okay? Quit being the way you're being right now, because we ain't vibing.
So it was a great throwing in of a word that's come into resurgence recently. I'm surprised you didn't add Riz in there somewhere. But vibing was a good.
Vibing's coming
one.
back. Okay.
It's the past couple of years that has re-entered people's vocabulary. So good job, you're keeping up.
All things old or new again, right?
We're proud of you.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to do something I regret and ask, what does Riz mean? I know the RZA. Is it related to him?
No.
Huh? No.
All right.
No, it's not.
You don't know the
not
RZA?
I'll Google it. I'll Google it when we come to our break here in a second. Riz is like if you have game. So if you were trying to go on a date with a girl and you go up and talk to her and you're wow, did it hurt when you fell from heaven? That's not a good example,
right.
but that might be an example
right.
of wow, you have L Riz is what somebody would say, which means you don't have any game.
Right. Is that short for something? Or?
Charisma?
So supposedly it is, but when you look at like the first known use of the word, the guy was like, no, I didn't ever even make the connection of it being connected to charisma. It's just a word I made up. But then somebody was like, well, it makes sense that it would be short for charisma, that the context.
Because,
so
charismatic people.
As far as I'm concerned, when I explain it to my dad, I'll say, it's short for charisma, because it's too hard to be like, no, somebody just made it up, and there's really no reason for it.
You kids and your made up words. Dad, all words are made up.
Because you would think, you would think like sus is short for suspicious. You would think,
right.
But no, it's just a made up word. So now you know. We'll make that a recurring segment.
There we go.
Gen Z word of the day. And
they'll do like Gen Z word roulette.
Yes.
Just spin the wheel.
Yes. And then I have to explain.
You have to, explain that.
Oh boy. Yeah. Coming up on next week's episode. Yeah, we'll have to vet those words though, because I don't think I can explain some of those on these videos.
I'm going to Urban Dictionary and
no, absolutely not.
How did this even get on the wheel?
We'll work on installing that as a new segment. But in the meantime, we are going to take a short break to collect ourselves. But don't worry, we'll be back with more security news here on Technado.
You get a gift, you get a gift, you get a gift! Join us for the Edutainer's Favorite Things, a live tech gift giveaway where we're giving away the hottest gadgets of the year. Being part of your career journey is the gift that keeps on giving for us, and so we're excited to give you our top gadgets of the year, including a new iPad, a Raspberry Pi, even a free 1-year subscription to IT Pro. You have 12 chances to win, so tune in to IT Pro's YouTube channel on 12/12 at 2 p.m. so you can win big at ACI Learning.
Welcome back to more Technado. Thanks so much for sticking with us through that break. Just a reminder, if you are watching on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us, and we would love to hear your thoughts on the articles we've covered so far down below, any other stuff you want us to cover in the future, or just how you're enjoying the show in general. We'd love it if you dropped a like if you're having a good time. Also, you may have just seen, if my calculations are correct, a little teaser for a giveaway that we're going to be doing here in the next week. It's a little Edutainer's Favorite Things giveaway. We each got to pick a fun little device that we like. Well, I say little. Some of them are not so little. And we are going to be giving those away, I believe, on the 12th. That's going to be a live giveaway, December 12th at 2 p.m. And we have the prizes here on the table. You may have noticed, and if you've been watching the last few weeks, they've been there. So we've got an iPad over here. We've got, I believe there's a drone over on the other side of the table. Fun little Thanos gauntlet. I can't remember the name of it right now. But anyway, I think we also have a Raspberry Pi that's been added to the table this week.
Yep, I just added that. I had pre-ordered it and hoped it was going to come in time, and it did. So a Raspberry Pi 5, those are sold out everywhere, so we're going to give one of those away. And we got a full set of backdoors and breaches, the tabletop incident response game, which is just a lot of fun. They released a new playmat, so we got that in. That'll all be one set that we'll give away. So a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to ACI because I just got my subscription to the monthly Jams and Jellies. Confirm that quick.
Yes.
In lieu of a company bonus.
Yeah.
Is it Raspberry Jam?
It's raspberry. Yeah, I can make my own Raspberry Pi.
There you go. That's all we can really ask for during this.
Bread and jelly.
This is just peanut butter and jelly, but for kids with peanut allergies.
Yeah, that's it.
That's great. All right. Well, good to know. We're inclusive here at ACI Learning. So join us for that giveaway. We are looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be live. So that'll be a good time. All the edutainers here on this big, lovely couch. What we call it? A couch? Booth?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it's called. Anyway,
Stall.
Yeah. It's the corner booth at
this
a
bus
local
bench
diner.
that we're sitting on.
Why does it
Denny's.
smell like vomit?
So yes, that will be next week. But for now, we do have some more articles for you, and I know you're waiting with bated breath to hear about them. So we'll go ahead and jump into this first one. This comes to us from the Hacker News. LogoFAIL, UEFI vulnerabilities expose devices to stealth malware attacks. And I know that Don and Daniel both are our security gurus here, so I'm trusting they're going to maybe break this one down for me.
Sure, and I'm curious to hear Daniel's take on it. But over the years, we have heard about like BIOS attacks, where somebody can inject malware or just malicious anything into the BIOS of a computer, which makes it almost impossible to detect. The system boots up. The malware is activated before even the kernel of your operating system is loaded. So now it's running under the kernel, capable of doing whatever it wants, and even remaining invisible to your anti-malware, antivirus, and other types of intrusion detection software. So really advanced, really risky stuff. But historically, it involved the attacker having physical access to your machine or compromising the supply chain. Well, UEFI was designed to fix that, or not specifically UEFI.
Designed to fix malware, to make it easier for those malware authors.
To make it more difficult by introducing the Secure Boot feature. So
Right.
Secure Boot is what's actually supposed to fix this. With Secure Boot, it says, hey, when UEFI loads a boot image, it needs to be digitally signed. And it needs to be digitally signed by somebody we trust. And if somebody has tampered with that boot image, we'll throw up a red flag. We won't boot it. Right? So now if an attacker tries to compromise our UEFI BIOS, we'll know about it versus the old BIOS where we wouldn't know about it. Now we do. Secure Boot protects us. Well, some security researchers found a way to work around that. When you boot up a computer, there are many times, not always, but many times, where the BIOS is configured to display some kind of boot logo. If you boot up a Dell, you'll usually see the Dell logo, or Asus does different ones. If you have like an Asus Tough motherboard, it'll show that logo. Or maybe it's just a generic logo for AMI or Phoenix or whoever made the BIOS that you're using, but they display a logo. And that logo is a simple bitmap file that's stored alongside the UEFI image. Well, that doesn't have to be digitally signed. Because it's just an image. What damage could an image possibly do? Well, some security researchers tested that and found out quite a bit. They were able to load malware in there and take advantage of bugs in the image renderer. So when the image is being rendered to display on screen, they can have their malicious code be executed. And it's the same effect as introducing malicious BIOS or modifying the UEFI image without it being signed. So they're able to get this to execute. And that's not a good thing.
No, it just goes to show you when marketing and sales get involved, they increase your attack surface for no good reason other than brand recognition, right? And basically that's what it boils down to, because what's the purpose of having the Dell logo, or what's the purpose of having any logo at a boot up other than trying to get people to have brand recognition when they see X, Y, or Z, then they associate that with something good or something they know. So as they see it down the road, like give me a reason, like why would I need a splash page during UEFI boot?
All right, so there's definitely brand recognition, but you're going to have that anyway because the laptop has logos and stuff that are on it, right? Or maybe on a desktop.
Yeah, but that doesn't increase your attack surface.
No, that's true. But initially, why they rolled out this feature, because Microsoft was really involved in rolling out some of this back in the early days, is they wanted to hide the scary BIOS screen from end users.
The thing we lived with forever that never bothered us?
Yeah, you'd see the screen. It came up with some software version, AMI BIOS, blah, blah, blah. Press F1 to go into settings or press delete, and you'd see it detecting hard drives and so on.
I loved that.
As an IT person, we do. And oftentimes we might want to disable the logo so we can see it.
Yeah.
But like Linux does the same thing. Remember how it used to be when you booted Linux, you'd see 1,000 lines scroll across all the different services starting and the scripts that were running and all the OKs, hopefully green OKs going down your screen and not the red ones.
Yeah, we don't like those.
But when you install Ubuntu today, what do you see? You see an Ubuntu logo.
Yeah. And
it just sits there while it's booting, and it hides all that from the user. So I think that was the original intent of this.
It's the digital hand wave. Just trust us.
It'll be fine.
That things are going well. And, that is resemblant of other things in our lives as well. Just trust what's going on. You don't need to question or anything like that. We have your best interests at heart. But when it comes back down to it, I think my point is clear. Like, what is one of the things that we tell people that are getting into cybersecurity? One of the very first things that we tell them when it comes to system hardening is reduce your attack surface. turn off services that aren't being used. Don't do things if they're not absolutely necessary, because it could be a point of attack that just hasn't been discovered yet, or it has been discovered and you don't even realize it, and you're therefore not protecting for it. So the easy thing to do is just say, we're not going to do that, right? If I don't need SSH, I don't use SSH. I don't turn it on. I don't enable it. I don't make it a thing that is on my system, because if I'm not using it, it's really easy for me to forget that it's even there and not do updates for it and not administer that because it's not being used, just sitting there and doing something. If UEFI is an attack vector, we need to reduce that attack surface down, and goes back to the simplicity and ease of use versus security. It's almost always that sliding scale of being, yes, you have a prettier thing. It doesn't give you heart palpitations when you see text rolling down the screen. Get used to it, right?
Yeah.
Get a helmet. That's how computers work. Don't worry about it. Trust the process. If you can trust that my logo is fine and everything's working because the logo is up there, then you can trust that the weird text rolling down the screen is just there for not you. Don't worry about it. Wait till the machine boots and then go to work.
Now, I think we'll see an outcome from this one, because there's some vendors like Apple and Microsoft with their Surface tablets where they make their own BIOS. They don't rely on a third party. They make their own, and so you don't see a boot screen. When you boot an Apple, you just see an Apple on the screen, and then it goes into the OS, and they don't have a BIOS screen that you can access at all.
Right.
Period. Like, you just can't get to it. On a Microsoft Surface tablet, it's not much different. So
Gotcha.
they really don't want you going in and messing with BIOS settings, but you can.
You
They
can.
just don't want you to.
Right.
But with other vendors, so when you go to Dell and HP and all these other manufacturers out there, a lot of them don't write their own BIOS. Instead, they're licensing it. The two biggest ones are Phoenix. So Phoenix BIOS is really popular, and AMI, which I always thought was the dumbest name because it's American Megatrends International.
American International. Yeah.
I mean, I guess you can be international if you're like U.S., Canada, and Mexico.
That's true.
And still be...
Technically, you only have to between two nations, right?
All right. So if you're, stay out of Europe. But but those are the two big ones. And so you buy a Dell, and Dell manufactures
You can
that
buy a
laptop,
Dell?
right? You can, dude.
She is very cheap.
But when you buy these, a lot of times they don't even manufacture them. There's large companies like Foxconn and Unisys and those guys that actually manufacture the devices, and they're using BIOS from these other companies. And so because of that, this particular exploit affects a number of different brands that are out there. So it's got a really wide reach. And so they will be doing patches. They're going to be BIOS updates, which users don't do. Nobody updates their BIOS. So, just realistically, most people don't even know it's there. But I suspect this will push people like Dell to say, you know what? Maybe we should start looking into creating our own BIOS for our hardware.
So are these vulnerabilities that, like, as an end user, could somebody take any action, like, in the meantime to protect themselves, or is it just kind of a wait till something changes?
Right. You don't have really a lot. You have to wait until the BIOS manufacturer issues an update to your BIOS, and then you have to apply the update. And some of these tools, I think, like Lenovo and whatnot, they have systems in place to kind of check and see if there are updates to your BIOS, and will say, hey, you need to probably do this.
So just keep your stuff updated is really the only
That's
thing.
it.
Yeah, but even here,
this is a
very low risk, right?
Yeah, this is a low risk thing. I mean, it's possible that you could fall suit to this, get a rootkit installed into your system, because you can download these like firmware stagers where you double click an exe and it runs, and it says, hey, you got to reboot your system to update your BIOS, and it can do it all that way. So this has opened that threat vector up. But again, this isn't something people do all the time. And if it's going to happen, it would probably be far enough down the road that the system vendors would already have a real update for this.
Sure.
Okay.
And the attacker would either have to have physical access to your system,
right,
which is pretty unlikely. So right there, this becomes a very minimal thing, or they have to have compromised the supply chain.
Right.
And if they've done that, then when you buy the laptop or desktop or whatever, it's already infected, and they likely are protecting themselves from an update
Yeah,
as
and
well.
if it's a supply chain thing, you're screwed anyway.
If they
right?
do that,
Like,
you might as well just
there's
go off the
nothing
grid.
you can do.
Just leave the
It's all
country.
trusted. You just got to wait to go here. So here's the thing. You're gonna laugh, but we got compromised. Oh man, what are you gonna do?
Save that for the last article.
Yeah, right.
Oh boy. I like when we get little teasers looking ahead at what we're going to talk
No
about.
big deal.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah.
Move
Oh,
along.
boy. Well, we're not quite there yet. We have a couple more to go. We'll go ahead and jump into our next one. This one comes to us from Bleeping Computer. Hackers use new Agent Raccoon malware to backdoor U.S. targets. So I'm curious, is this sponsored by Marvel Comics or no?
Might as well be. They did say it was sponsored by a nation state, although they didn't identify which one.
It's
so they're-
Ultron is behind the attack.
Yeah.
He's covering it.
I'm starting to become desensitized to these, where like, oh no, it's a nation state. Well, yeah,
What's
it doesn't
not?
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just crazy. But they're saying that this one is targeted at specific systems, but they're not telling us who they're targeted at.
From what I read, they don't know yet. They have yet to really have attribution. They have
Okay.
code that's similar, but they're not sure. Because
So-
you know how these things go. They kind of share stuff around the old dark web. And
Yeah, I mean, this one came out of Unit 42.
yes.
And we've heard from Unit 42 a number
Palo
of times.
Alto.
Palo Alto.
Yeah.
Yep. And what they're saying is, they have their systems in networks all over the world. And so when an attack comes out like this, they can look and say, all right, which of our customers are affected? So they have an idea of the types of customers. And they're saying, when we look at the types of customers affected, this looks like a nation state attack, which means, maybe if they're seeing it's military bases that are being hit, or
well, because they're looking at the sophistication behind it, and they're looking at the targets that they're going after. Like you said, it could be a military base, it could
Utilities.
be right, that kind of stuff, as well as if it's nation state, they're probably doing things specifically like espionage. So it's looking for files related to X, Y, or Z, and trying to exfiltrate data back to certain C2 areas or whatever that is known to be for that reason.
So they've said, based on the targets they're seeing, they suspect this is a nation state,
Right.
but they don't know
With
which one.
medium confidence.
Medium confidence.
Yeah.
That's, wow.
Well, and because
leaves an out,
they
doesn't it?
probably need to do more research, and they're collecting data, and so that they can confirm that that's where it's going, because it's not out of the realm of possibility that some random APT is just like, oh, we're just really good at our job. And why not, grab a bunch of national security things and things that would pertain to a government or organization to that ilk, and then sell them to nation states.
Yeah. I looked through the execution mechanism, how it worked, and I didn't see anything new and exciting there. I saw, it's using the puny code.
The puny code was interesting. I liked that, right?
Yep.
As far as like, don't do it. But the puny code is just a different way in which you can render a URL, which changes it. And if you're doing, I say URL, I mean a domain. If you're doing any kind of domain filtering, like these are known domains, we'll DNS sinkhole them or just completely block them with our firewall and proxy servers and all that kind of stuff. It would bypass that because it doesn't fit the actual domain that they know is malicious.
Yep. They need some of that Gmail AI to recognize that it's a little bit off. If you're not familiar with puny code, as the internet started to expand, a lot of it was developed right here in the U.S. It was built around the Latin alphabet.
Yeah.
And so DNS domain names were limited to the Latin alphabet, like A through Z and 0 through 9. You had those kind of limitations. Well, then you start getting into countries that use the Cyrillic alphabet, and we didn't even have support for those letters. And so Punycode was one of the earlier ways to work around that, was ways to represent those international characters in a different format. Now we have support for like UTF-8 and stuff that takes care of it. But this one's still around, still supported. And so they were able to take their malicious C2 names, their domain names, and just write them in a way that was obfuscated. And it worked. They was able to get around some of the detection systems until people like Palo Alto figured out what was going on, and then they can sinkhole those other domain names.
And they get so much information, and they're constantly looking for, new strands of malware and new versions of malware. That they have honeypots set up, and that's all they're designed to do, is to try to see what kind of weird things are happening so that they can identify these things as soon as they become available, right? And then start to build signatures and things of that nature, so we can start defending against them. So, and after that, though, it just does all the latest and greatest hits, right? Gives you remote access, does file upload and download. I think it does providing remote access, file upload, and command execution. Yeah.
Yep. And the distribution mechanism for this one is it's packaged up as a what looks like a Microsoft update. And the most common form of it looks like a OneDrive update. And so, you should be getting those through Windows Update. Normally, you shouldn't be downloading them on your own. But if you get this file that says, this is a patch for OneDrive and you run it, then that's what infects the system. So they're not really the greatest job of masking that. I don't know how they're smuggling it in. But
a couple of interesting things that it does do is like it has its own version of like Mimikatz, which is for
okay.
Yeah, are you familiar with Mimikatz?
No.
Okay, so Mimikatz is a tool used by hackers to grab credentials from the system.
Okay,
right. It can
see that being useful.
actually grab the NTLM hashes and things of that nature. But Mimikatz is a very well-known tool for doing that. If you have a Windows system, have some fun. Name a file Mimikatz and watch your system go. No.
How do you spell that?
Mimikatz.
Okay.
Mimikatz, right? Windows Defender does not like this thing.
Huh.
So they have created their own version of that. It's called Mimi Lite. And they've also grabbed another, like a DLL that's used, which is the N2 Spy network protocol DLL that it uses, and it's made a mimic of that. So this is how they obfuscate and hide. They name things and they create their own version, so it's not signatured, and allows them to do those credential grabbing. So they're going to grab all those creds so they can exfiltrate that information, crack those credentials, and then they start doing credential stuffing, try to pivot with it, use all that stuff for their own nefarious purposes.
Good times.
I'm sorry. I'm having a moment here because I think this is the first and only time ever, and it probably will never happen again, that a word has been said on this podcast that I knew that Dawn did not. And this is the only time it's ever going to happen, and I have to just sit and take it in for a second. And the only reason I know it is because Daniel taught me what it is. That's the only reason I have to put that caveat in there.
So we
played with Mimikatz.
We've played with Mimikatz. That's the only reason I know what it is. Because we've done episodes where he's used it before. Otherwise, I would have no idea. But when you were like, no, I'm not familiar with that, I was like,
oh, you can do what's called a skeleton key attack with Mimikatz, which is really fun, where you run the specific command that will allow for the skeleton key, and then it creates. So it makes it to where you can log in with the administrator with the password of skeleton or password. I forget what it is off the top of my head now. And yeah, you log in. Like, even though, like, if you are the administrator and you have your own password, that still works too. But so does now the word password. Right? And we did this in, I think, CEH.
Probably.
We did a demonstration.
There's a good bet we've done everything in
Mimikatz is a hell of a tool, and it does a lot of fun stuff. So if you've never played with it before, go download it. It's got a GitHub repo. Have fun.
Well, there you go. So Agent Raccoon, not really anything breaking and new, but putting stuff together, and it's an attack that has been documented out in the wild right now, going on while we speak.
I do enjoy the little picture of the raccoon they used where he's like posted up in front of his he's got his dual monitor set up and looks like a hacker. Was that AI generated?
That's
maybe?
not an AI generated.
Certain it's AI generated. Yeah, that's our new world.
What's not? Anymore,
he looks angry.
Who's got time to do art anymore? And just get AI to do it for us.
Just get the computer to do it for us.
Yeah.
But
they did that with movies for so long. Why are we so pissed now?
I just feel bad for people that are in like the fourth year of their art degree, in college, and
it makes me think of Red Letter Media when they're like, this movie is the greatest thing that you can make on your computer. I'm like, yes, that is a true statement.
Oh boy, what a brave new world. Well, we've come to the moment that we've all been waiting for, the article that Don referenced earlier. And this is part of a segment called Who Got Pwned?
Looks like you're about to get pwned.
Fatality. There he is. I like that we throw a little Mortal Kombat soundbite in there too. That's fun.
So fun fact, that guy in that image, the WoW player,
whatever,
yeah, that is a real guy. It is based off a real guy who was he worked for Blizzard on WoW, and that guy, that is his apartment. That is him. That he collaborated with Trey Parker and Matt Stone on that episode. He helped art design. He was the art design manager for WoW.
All right,
I found that out the other day.
Huh.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah,
what a fun fact.
Yeah.
We bring you tech news and various other things. So this article, we're pulling this from Slashdot. This one says 23andMe confirms hackers stole Ancestry data on 6.9 million users. Oh, who could have guessed? Who could have predicted that this was something that could happen? Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
All right. There's a couple of things here to tackle. Let's just start with the basic facts, because I think we haven't talked about 23andMe on the podcast. I don't think at all.
I don't remember ever saying it.
I've always looked at it and thought, you got to be nuts to share your DNA with some third-party company and assume something good is going to come out of that. But plenty of people do it. And if you're not familiar with them, you must live under a rock. But you can send in a blood sample, and they run a DNA scan test. They look at it and say enhance a lot. And then they're able to look and determine your genealogy. So if you're curious, there's a lot of people who say, like, I'm Irish American. Do you really know that? And they can find that out. They can look at your DNA and tell you, and you can figure out exactly what your heritage is and so on. So it's a neat idea.
I had a friend of mine who was adopted, and he had no idea what his heritage was. And he got married. He was getting ready to have a kid, and was like, I want to know a little bit so I can tell my kids where they're from. So he did 23andMe and found out where he was from. Yeah.
So it's neat.
It is.
Now, there are people like me that are opposed to doing stuff like that. And my reasoning is, not that I think it's criminal, but,
a public repository of your DNA.
When you think about biometrics, right? If somebody gets my password, like if a hacker gets my password, I just change my password.
Right.
But if somebody gets my thumbprint, I can't change my thumbprint. I mean, I got 9 other fingers. I can go on, but eventually that runs out. So you hack 10 times. Now you're trying to get your toe up on your keyboard.
You're taking a shoe off to get inside a building.
So I'm more defensive of who I'm going to give biometric data to. And your DNA, in theory, is 100% of your biometric data.
Yeah.
Like, not today, but in the future, they could, if you have like a retinal scan, that's encoded in your DNA. Your fingerprints, all of that is in your DNA. So I don't like to share that with anybody. So when I heard about this breach, that was my first thought was, holy crap, did somebody just leak DNA data, right? And this might be the first time that's happened. Well, just to be clear, that did not happen. And what happened is attackers were able to access some accounts, which initially 23andMe announced as about 14,000 accounts, and they were able to get the account data as well as the genealogical information for that account. So, what your heritage, race, whatever, all that information.
You can fill out a survey for them, is what you're saying.
You can complete a census report with the information that you got, yes. Maybe not their pay, like their salary, but everything else.
Yeah.
So that's not good. But then, like we talked about last week, these things have a way of expanding. And it turns out that it's not just those 14,000 users that were affected, because 23andMe had a share DNA feature where you could share your DNA with other people, not the actual DNA, but the findings. So you could actually find long-lost relatives. You find out in your family tree or whatever that it turns out you were related to somebody you didn't even know it.
Yeah.
And so that's neat and fun. And millions of people did it. And so through these 14,000 compromised accounts, the attackers were then able to access the data of millions. I think it was it 6.8 million?
Yeah.
Okay.
6 point something. Yeah.
6 million people and their genealogical information. So not good.
No. This is interesting. Like, this is a definitely a different type of breach because of the company and the data that they hold. It's not normal that a data breach may include your DNA. Right. So very cool. Other than that, it just seems to be another welcome to Breachland, 23andMe. Yeah. We meet on Thursdays.
Yeah. I'm curious, though, because okay, if one of my accounts gets breached, and it's like my email account or, whatever, they've got my name, maybe they've got my address, password, whatever, maybe they've got contact information or a physical address for me, and that's obviously not good. In this case, though, you would think, okay, well, so they know my ethnic background, my heritage, whatever, so what? But there was I thought I remembered reading about this a while ago when this was first being talked about, that specifically there was like this sample of like 100 or 1 million data points that were specifically about Ashkenazi Jews. So they were like targeting based on the ethnic background. So does that then add another layer of like...
Well, I mean, it definitely has possibilities. So let's say I'm a 23andMe subscriber or whatever you call it, right? A user. I submit my DNA, they do a profile, they hold that information, and now they've been breached. Well, let's say, obviously these are hackers that have done this, black hats that are out there, threat actors that have accessed this. In my mind, they probably are using this for the purposes of targeted phishing, right? I can say, hey, I'm your long-lost so-and-so, and we start up, and it's like basically a catfish where I say that I'm we're cousins from a distant land and so, and we start a relationship, and it's like, hey, can you send me a little bit of money? I'm in Ukraine. I'm in a war-torn area that I could really use that money to help us survive. And we're related. So all of a sudden you got like a point of contact, you got some trust built in. I might be able to start like bilking you for money or gain access to your system. Who knows? I'm going to send you some pictures of the family from over here. Definitely download and unzip this. And if you get any prompts, just yes. It's because we're in a different area of the world. Yeah, you could sell a lot of different social engineering type of things to people because they're ignorant of how these things work. And that's not a pejorative. That just means that most people don't understand how computers work. We're throwing splash screens up because they don't. Oh, scary text on the screen. Obviously, you can use that to your advantage if you were an attacker, and I see that being one of the ways they could use it.
Okay. All right, now let's add a little twist to this one, because I forget which company we were teasing last week about how they expanded their breach notification.
Oh yeah, who was it? Was it OwnCloud?
Somebody big. No, because OwnCloud was just bad from the beginning.
Okay.
There was another one that was a big one where they announced a breach and they were like, oh, it only affected a certain amount of users, and they expanded it out. Oh, Okta.
Oh yeah, Okta.
Big.
Yeah.
And so Okta came out and was like, oh, it's actually millions of people. Whoops, our bad. In this case, 23andMe went from the 14,000 number to the 6 million number. And a lot of times we don't know what goes on in their minds to make them like expand out like that. In this case, we actually do.
Do we really?
It's not in the article, but in other news feeds, I picked up on this. So they initially released the 14,000 users.
Okay.
And they said, we weren't hacked. It was a credential stuffing attack. Some other website was hacked, and the attackers came to us and were logging in with a username and password that were obtained from some other site. They logged in with valid credentials, and they accessed the data. So it's bad, but it's not our fault. That was the initial stance they came out with. Well, it turns out 23andMe has a user, and that user is named Rob Joyce. Now, if you don't know Rob Joyce is the cybersecurity director for the National Security Agency, the NSA.
Interesting. We're about to put Rob Joyce on blast here.
And Rob Joyce said, wait a minute. You're saying this is credential stuffing, but I use a unique email address on every single website I access. Now, I don't do this because this is crazy.
This is hardcore. Well, I mean, he works for the NSA, right?
He does. Yep.
Makes sense.
So this is somebody who's going to have the highest security possible. He has a unique email address. I'm not talking about like a plus whatever, but an actual unique email address for every single service he uses. So it can't be credential stuffing.
Right.
How do they know his username? He doesn't use that username anywhere else except on 23andMe. Oh. And so that's when 23andMe, they were going, whew, thank goodness we dodged a bullet. It's credential stuffing, not our fault.
Well, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. And then they started looking, and that's when they found the problem with the shared DNA stuff. The shared DNA feature not only allowed you to share data between 23andMe users, but they also teamed up with another company whose name I've forgotten, MyHeritage. So a company called MyHeritage. So you could exchange users between them, too, connecting the user bases. And MyHeritage had a breach. And because 23andMe was sharing your data with MyHeritage, and Rob Joyce said, yeah, I use that shared DNA service. I thought it would be neat to find out who was on my family tree. That's how it expanded out, and that's why it bumped up to 6 plus million. And that's why 23andMe had to come out and say it, because Rob posted on Twitter or X. He went out there and said, like, hey, I use a unique email address. Personally, Don, I've thought about doing that before, but it's a giant pain in the butt.
I have a few email accounts for that kind of purposes, so I basically kind of break it down into categories instead of having one per service. I have one per category, and that allows me to sign up and do things that I'm like, okay, dangerous, mildly dangerous, not so dangerous, and like completely benign, and or like personal kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. I love the idea. I like the idea of if I get spam, I should be able to, if I use a different email address for every service, I should be able to look at what email address that went to and know who sold me out.
Yeah.
Who sold me out onto that list.
Yeah. And with password managers, it's making it a lot easier to do that.
Yeah.
Right. It's just the sign up process that becomes kind of a pain.
Well, so my problem there is, so like I use Office 365 for my personal email. And with that, you have plus addresses,
Right.
So let's say, I'm not going to say my personal email on the air, but so let's just say it's donpazette@outlook.com, which it doesn't. But if it were, I can do donpazette plus Facebook at outlook.com and donpazette plus MySpace, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Well, attackers know anything after the plus, just chop that off, and this is their base email address, right? So it's not really effective.
Right.
But
it's more organizational for the user.
If they gave me some way to generate a unique, like give me a freaking GUID.
Right.
It's not like I'm ever going to type it.
It's going in the password manager.
Yeah. So a 128-bit username, I don't care. Throw it in there. I would do that in a heartbeat. But there's not, to my knowledge, there's not a good service that does that. That doesn't require me to host my email with them, which I don't want to do. So maybe one day somebody will have a service like that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Well, I mean, yeah, it seems like with something like this, it was only a matter of time before this kind of issue happened when you've got all these people sharing their genetic information. So it's unfortunate, but hopefully nothing too terrible comes of it. And if you get an email saying, hey, I'm your long-lost cousin, send me some money, maybe just double-check that.
Yes.
Send that money to donpazette@outlook.com.
If you think that there's a Nigerian prince that's your, like, long-lost uncle.
I wonder how, like... I mean, the odds are there is a Nigerian prince that has a lot, right?
And he's going to reach out and be like, I don't understand. My family's just abandoned me.
And based off of that infinitesimally small percentage of probability that could happen, people have been scammed for years.
Yeah. And just to help fight fraud here, if you ever get a message from me requesting funds, just know that I only accept funds via PayPal, Venmo, Zelle.
He'll take Bitcoin.
I accept Bitcoin.
I accept Apple gift cards.
It'll be in one of those currencies, and as long as it's one of those currencies, it's fine. Send
it's all good.
Only $900 Apple gift cards, iTunes gift cards. That's all we accept here on Technado. You heard it here first.
I was hoping Don would start paying me in Apple gift cards.
Cut out the middleman.
Well, then the government doesn't know about it.
Yeah,
I'm buying everything with gift cards.
You can't buy a sandwich with an Apple gift card.
You sure can.
Can you?
Yeah, because you could load it up to like a Visa. Right? I could take that Apple gift card and buy Visa gift cards with it.
Oh, I thought you had to use it at like the Apple Store.
No, you can use them anywhere. They're gift cards, bro.
All right, well, it's branched out.
Yeah.
Interesting. Maybe don't do that, but you know, you could. Doesn't mean that you should.
Even if that's not true, you could still use, like, send me the gift card I can use.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
It's gift cards.
Oh, well, if you think you're going to start paying your employees in Apple gift cards, let us know down below. We'd love to see how that works out for you.
Let us know, but don't let the IRS know. You want to keep that
and
on the
even if it
DL.
is only Apple, I could buy an iPad and then sell it and make some money.
There you go.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
We're going to have to add a scrolling disclaimer to the bottom of this episode. Like, we do not condone
No, we
fraudulent
do
activity.
not.
Do
We
not
do
do
not.
anything
This is
Daniel
all for
says.
comedy purposes.
Don't kill your neighbor. You know, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
you
I didn't know that. You're not supposed to kill people. Weird.
Not supposed to kill them.
Against the law.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I like the
the
zoom
iPad.
in there. Yeah. Sponsored by.
Yeah. I didn't buy that with Apple gift cards, by the way.
You don't have to illegally purchase an iPad. You can just enter our competition.
That's true.
And win one.
And actually, I guess it is kind of a contest because I believe we're going to have some trivia. That it's not just like, hey, put your name in the hat. It's like you've got to actually come armed with some knowledge. And I think
Is Mimikat's going to be on there?
Yes,
Maybe.
you're going to have to define it in 10 words or less, and you have 30 seconds to do it, and we'll play the Jeopardy music. But no, you're going to have to answer some holiday trivia, holiday movie trivia specifically. Now, I don't know if we're going to limit that to like The Grinch and It's a Wonderful Life and Elf, or if we're going to throw in the Die Hards and Goodfellas of the world. We will just have to see, and you'll just have to show up if you want to find out what kind of trivia we're going to be using. And
You got a lot of stuff to start watching if you're
A lot of material.
if you're not doing that now.
Join the club, all right? I've got a list a mile long, so I have no sympathy.
Look how Caleb randomly jumped to my camera. I'm like, why am I on the screen?
Our director says that he will allow one Goodfellas question and one Die Hard, and that's it. That's all we get. But you'll just have to tune in to find out if that's true or not. But yes, that will be December 12th at 2 p.m., so tune in for that. It's going to be live, and Don and Dan and I will all be here along with the rest of the ACI Learning Edutators. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're really looking forward to it. Some other things coming up. I know we had a webinar last week with Bo Bullock. That was a lot of fun, so if you missed that, you can check that out.
The way you said that sounded like Bobula. Oh, Bobula.
Bobula.
Bobula was on.
That's my nickname for him.
Yeah,
We're best friends.
Bobula.
So we're tight like that.
Yeah.
We're on a nickname basis. No, Bo Bullock. I'm sorry, or Bullock. How do you pronounce that? Is it how does he-
Bullock.
Bullock.
Yeah.
So I had it right the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just,
Just-
you ran it together so
He's
fast.
just making me doubt myself.
I-
Well, if you want to
It's
see
mind
us
games.
talk to him and pronounce his name correctly, that lives here on the YouTube
Hold
channel.
on, he's
so
texting me right now.
you can he's mad. I'm gonna get sued.
It's like, oh, he is pissed.
Defamation. So you can check that out. It was a whole lot of fun. Check out the questions that we got, and we'll have more of those coming up in the new year. I think we're going to aim for having one every month. So that's going to be a lot of fun. We also had a webinar. I think John Hammond is our next one.
I think
in
so.
January.
Yep.
So it's going to be a lot of fun. That'll be his like his third time on the show. I think. I'm pretty sure.
No, I think it's more than that.
More than that.
Yeah,
He's
John,
been around
Third
John
time
is
on this show specifically. I mean.
on
All Things
All
Cyber.
Things Cyber. I think it's more.
Oh.
Yeah.
What do I know?
Regular.
Yeah.
Time's not real. I don't.
I could be wrong, but
Time's an illusion.
Time's an illusion.
Death is but a doorway.
And
I'll be back.
of course, we've got other webinars as well. We have one this week that was an audit webinar. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check that out. That's going to live on this channel as well. Some other things coming up. I think it's mostly going to be in the new year other than that giveaway. But of course, you can check out Technado here every week on Thursday. Check out all the episodes in the past that you might have missed here on the channel. And if you're listening on a podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can listen to all those old episodes as well. Leave a comment down below if you enjoyed this episode. Maybe drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already so you never miss an episode. And I think that is pretty much going to do it for my spiel. Did I talk too fast?
Did you take a breath?
I'm an auctioneer on the weekends,
Yeah.
Daniel. You know this. All right.
Hey, you got a webinar coming. It's all going to be audit.
Well, I think that is going to do it then. Obviously, there's nothing left to add. So thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Technado.
One more thing. Just kidding.
You know what?
Mind games. Mind games.
Everybody reach under your chair.
Would you like to play a game?
I need to go.
Yeah.
I need to go calm down. We're going to go ahead and end it there. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Bye.